Imagine, a podcast series by Imagine Theatre.
Hello again, I'm Martin Ballard, and once again I'm here at Imagine headquarters for episode 42 of this podcast series from one of the biggest producers of pantomime and children's theatre in the UK.
For more information, go to their website at www.imaginetheatre.co.uk.
Last time we heard from the performer, choreographer and casting consultant Graham Pickering. Now don't worry if you missed that or any of the other previous episodes with creatives, actors or behind the scenes tours of Imagine Theatre, because they are all still available. You can catch up with them all. And don't forget to subscribe to the series so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. This time, I'm delighted to say that I've been joined by Imagine's Business and Marketing Director, Sarah Bowden, for a tour of the nerve centre of the Imagine operations because, let's face it, things have certainly stepped up since we were here last. Final preparations are being made to sets and costumes, and trucks will soon be literally queuing up to collect for theatres all over the UK. Sarah, how are you?
Hello, Martin. Yeah, we're okay. We're okay. This time of year is a funny time of year. So much to do, so many things happening behind the scenes that people just don't see, which is why we thought it'd be fun to bring the podcast in to headquarters again, walk you around the building and show you just what's happening right now.
If that's possible, because it's a real hive of activity. There's hardly any space, people running up and down corridors. It really is stepping up.
Oh my goodness, it is so busy here at the moment. And it will just get busier over the coming weeks as well. As you rightly say, we aren't quite in the stage of loading the lorries yet, but we really aren't far off from it. And once the lorries start arriving, they just come in a constant string and they just keep coming.
Well, you say they're not here yet, but we'll see in a moment. The trundles are all getting ready, aren't they? Let's go down the corridor and have a look outside. Try not to disturb everybody in the office. Morning, everybody.
Morning.
There's Callum. Morning, Callum.
Morning.
How are you?
I'm very well.
Yeah, are you making a cup of tea by any chance?
Yes, the fuel of Imagine Theatre, tea.
We'll leave you to it.
We get through so much tea, Martin. It's crazy.
Now, what's going on in here?
All right, so everything that leaves the building that has a plug on it has to be pat tested. So today is pat testing day for all our sewing machines, irons, steamers, drills and kettles. And it doesn't sound like a lot of things that are going on, but every single production has at least one of each of those items, and we've got 21 productions going out this Christmas. So you're looking at the best part of 100 items being pat tested. So at the end of the day, we'll know which ones have passed, and which ones have failed, and which ones we have to replace.
Really important reasons why things have to be pat tested, but I'm looking here at, it's literally kettles and sewing machines floor to ceiling, and this is your meeting room, isn't it?
Yes.
Normally.
Normally, yes, to be fair. Yes, it is. It's literally floor to ceiling with irons and steamers and kettles and absolutely everything that's going out. There's even tablets going out this year so we can zoom into rehearsals if we need to. They've got to be pat tested as well. And we've got a production meeting this afternoon, so that's all got to be cleared very quickly once it's been pat tested.
Wow, you'll have to meet in the car park.
Yeah.
Mind you, there's no room out there either.
No, we have to play car Tetris at this time of year as well.
OK, well, let's carry on down the corridor because a hive of activity in just about every room. Who's this?
Oh, this is Em. Hi, Em. Em's one of our props assistants, so she's here helping us make sure all the props are ready to go, all boxed up and all ready and trundled and just packed. And she's super busy at the moment.
Yeah, we'll leave you to it. Spreadsheet there as well. Everything's barcoded. We talked about that on previous ones, which makes it easier, I guess. Mind that.
You see, Martin, you're welcome to Imagine at this time of year. There's stuff everywhere.
Oh, this is wardrobe now. Morning, Aaron.
Morning, how are you?
I know you're really busy because I've just had my frocks on and I've created lots of work for them, Sarah. Sorry about that.
Lovely, thanks.
So we'll leave them to it and head out here. This is the real unit where all the work is done, isn't it?
Absolutely. We're just heading into the main unit. You can probably hear that the echo around my voice has changed as we've walked into the main premises and the main store. The building here is 20,000 square feet and we probably take over the best part of 14 to 15,000 square feet with the stores and the scenery. On site, we've got over 40 complete pantomime sets. We've got more than 30,000 costumes. We've got more than 10,000 props. And every single item, as you rightly just said, is barcoded. So we have to go through and prep and check lists of every single thing that's going out. And the noise that you can probably hear behind you is what we call our hot box.
It looks like a fridge, but it's not.
Exactly, it looks exactly like a big fridge, but actually what it is it's a drying cabinet. What you can't do with theatrical costumes is you can't put them in a tumble dryer because they will shrink. So instead we have basically big drying cabinets, and that's what's in there at the moment. And if you open it up, you can hear.
Hello, Cinders.
It's a Cinderella costume, and it's obviously been cleaned and it's ready to go and it's being dried.
Excellent. This is an interesting thing because we've talked about this previously, but we're in the middle now of what people are talking about as an energy crisis, a cost of living crisis. We know energy bills are going up and up and up. I mean, lighting, those sort of heaters and all the other things that you've got in here, that has to be a concern this winter, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. We are not immune to the bill crisis the same as everybody else. Luckily, about 3 years ago, we invested in replacing all the lighting through the building as LED. That still has to be paid for, but it's a lot more cost effective than it was when it was tungsten. So that's a positive. At least the investment we made a few years ago hopefully will pay for itself with the saving of the electricity. But the building itself, this unit that you're standing in, it's impossible to heat it. It's just too big. We can only heat localised areas where people are working. So we're not dealing with massive heaters in here. We just have to put on a lot of layers when it comes to the height of the winter and when we're loading all the lorries.
Well, it's so high as well that if you pumped any heating in, it would just go up, and nobody would benefit anyway, would they?
Well, that's right. Because of the scenery that we have stored in this store, some of them can be as high as 12 metres at their very height to go into theatre. So you've got to find a space where you can stand that up. At its edges, this building is 8 metres tall, but at its centre, it's over 12 metres tall. And as you can see, when you look up, Martin, you can see that we're actually almost touching the ceiling with several pieces of scenery that are in here. It's just impossible to heat. And it's got a massive dock door, so the minute that you open the dock door, all the heat escapes anyway.
And the dock doors are open for most of the winter because there's stuff coming in and out.
Absolutely they are, yeah, because we're loading. We've got one single dock door and we're loading out, probably as we touched upon in one of the previous podcasts, between 70 and 80 lorries are going out and the same number of lorries are coming back. So we just have to have the dock door open all the time.
Okay, I'm interested to have a look at this down here because it looks like somebody's working on this. I'll try and describe it for you. It's got some dials on the front. It looks like it could be a shop mobility scooter or something, but it's been adapted and modified. What's this going to be?
It's going to be a time machine, Martin.
It looks like it, yeah.
Yeah, for Sleeping Beauty. The basis is basically a mobility scooter, as you rightly say. That will allow us to drive it safely around the stage, but it's being Panto embellished, shall we say. The guys in the office and the team are brilliant at painting and embellishing. They're all props makers and scenic artists. So what started as a plain mobility scooter will soon not look anything like a mobility scooter.
Snow White in front?
Yes. So
By any chance?
Yeah, absolutely Snow White. Snow White's glass coffin, again, in for refurbishment and what looks like a major re-glittering project. We get through an unbelievable amount of glitter here. Trying to move to much more biodegradable glitter is an interesting challenge because it doesn't really exist heavily on the market at the moment, but that is the challenge we are actively pursuing. But yeah, it is that time of year when there's lots of black outlining going on the sets, lots of painting, lots of glittering, lots of preparing sets, and that's Anna and Jason head up the sets and Ruth and Emma heading up the props. So between them all, they literally spend the day covered in sparkles.
Well, I'd like to see that with Jason, but sadly he knew I was coming in today, so he's taken the day off.
He's actually over at the workshops at the moment. So over at MI Workshops, he's putting away a Beauty and the Beast set, which has just been refurbished, and pulling out a Cinderella set, which is going under some scenic artwork over at the workshops.
Behind us here, flats, portals, that sort of thing, floor to ceiling scenery. In front of us, again, stacked up cloths, floor to ceiling on shelving, and then further down some bigger props stroke pieces of scenery, a boat here. And is this a Dick Whittington ship here or something else?
Absolutely, Dick Whittington ship. Yeah, that's getting ready to have another bit of scenic art done on it, ready to go out. Yeah, not so much glittering on this boat. The boats tend not to be glittered, but that tends to be more the portals and the scenery that's being glittered. But yes, this is ready for its refurb.
This is working set. This is three-dimensional and people can get on and off it. One of a number of these that you've probably got. I know certainly doing Dick Whittington a few years ago, a different one. You will have several of these, as you will several Cinderella coaches and so on.
We don't just do one production of Cinderella and one production of Dick Whittington. We have multiples of everything. So standing next to you, Martin, what looks like a huge piece of metal is actually a flying carpet. And that flying carpet is getting ready to have its Lola testing, because everything has to be lift tested to make sure that it's safe, and that's out. The Lola testing happens next week, so that's being prepared at the moment. But yeah, multiples of everything. If you need a flying carpet, we've got 6. If you need a Cinderella coach, we've actually got 9. And that's just what it's like. Giants, we've got lots of them, but that's the nature of it. But the thing is, they're all big and bulky and heavy.
Yeah.
And that's why we need such a big scenic store. And that's why there's so much going on around us that we can see today. I wish we could show pictures of what we were doing today, because people wouldn't be able to believe it.
You'd give it away then. The magic, I won't even describe the magic carpet. Anybody who's in the business will have an idea, and anybody who isn't doesn't want to know, because that spoils the magic. There's an octopus up on the suspended on the ceiling behind you as well, along with giants. There's just about everything you could ever imagine in here.
Oh yeah, you need it. We've probably got it. My favourite phone call ever that I answered in head office was someone saying, "Hello, do you have a polar bear I could borrow?" to which my response was, "No, but I've got a panda bear, if that will help."
And I'm sure it did as well.
But it's just the random phone calls that happen in this office, and you think this wouldn't quite happen anywhere else, really.
We'll see Audrey as well in a moment. Which way are we going? That way or straight down?
Let's go to the left.
Okay, so we'll cut across in between some of the large pieces of working scenery like the ships and so on. And here, first couple of trundles. Now, you were telling me earlier that these are costumes that are about to be prepared to go.
We have a costume store upstairs, and in that costume store, as I touched upon, there's about 30,000 costume pieces up there, so it's quite big. But every single show has to have its costumes prepared. So what we do, today is a Friday, and we're pulling down the costumes today, ready to prepare for next week. So if you look in these trundles that you're with at the moment, these are in the centre of the unit. They have got costumes in them, but those costumes are not yet bagged and labelled. We'll go a little bit further around the corner and you'll find trundles that are full of costumes that are both bagged and labelled. It's that bag and that label that tells us that the costume has been prepared. So these ones we're looking at here are being pulled down, ready to be prepared next week. So there's a team of people getting everything ready, and then there's a team ready for next week, and then there's a team of people who will do the prepping for next week. And it's a constantly moving cycle, and we tend to prepare between 2 and 3 shows a week at this point in the year. We've got 17 or 18 of our own shows being prepared in this way, plus multiple hires. And this process of preparing these shows has probably been going on already for the past 10 weeks.
Wow.
And it will continue to move forwards. It's just a never-ending cycle at this time of year. But it's a very simple code. Has it got a bag on it? Yes or no? If it hasn't, we haven't yet prepared it and it's not ready to go out.
And just in case you don't know what a trundle is, it's a hefty, I have to say very hefty and very heavy wooden box with a front that comes off to allow you to put the costumes in, and that's how that will be transported to the various venues. You must send hundreds of these out.
Gosh, so many of them, Martin. They're probably about 6 to 8 foot wide, maybe even a bit longer than that. Maybe some of them are even about 10 foot long. They're about 2 to 2.5 foot wide, and then they're probably a good 6 foot tall. And yes, we pack. Each show that we send out for our own productions has at least 2 trundles, sometimes 3, and that's the same with the hires as well. And they're big, heavy bits of kit that you can't take down. You can't fold them. They have to be stored solid. So we've got 2 big industrial containers in our front yard just full of trundles. That's what they store. They store the wardrobe trundles when they've not gone out. Costumes have to be kept safe. They have to be kept, they can't fold them. We don't want to fold them. So the best way, they go on a hanger in the trundle. So they're actually hanging on a rail in the trundle. And that's how we send them.
Absolutely, and for good reason, because if you didn't do it like that, there'd be no point preparing them to send them out, because they'd be in a terrible state when they got there again. So it makes absolute sense. Let's carry on down here, just round the corner at the bottom. Oh, these are interesting. Tell us about these, because these are new and being made for this year.
Absolutely, yes. We decided to expand our LED technology a little. I can't give too much away at the moment because it's still very much a work in progress. But yes, some some new shiny portals for your production in Leicester, Martin.
Ooh, I like the look of these. I won't give too much away, but there are a fair number of these. Who's the mastermind behind this operation?
So this is a gentleman called Glyn who works for us, who's been doing all the LED installations in them. They're big steel boxes. And yeah, Dave and Cal and Jason and Anna have been doing a lot of the work behind the scenes on these. Watch out, Leicester and Hayes, because they're going into 2 different productions this Christmas.
Fabulous. And everywhere we go, more flats, portals, pieces of scenery. There's what looks like a wishing well here as well.
Can I put some magic money in the wishing well and wish everything to be all right this Christmas and wish everybody well and things like that?
Maybe you should. That won't do any harm, will it? Meanwhile, let's talk about floors.
Panto floors. So again, what people don't necessarily realise when they come and see a panto that they aren't a part of is that more often than not, we install a false floor in the theatre. But that false floor has to be prepared, painted, sized, and so on. So most of the summer was spent at various venues across the country laying down what is basically sheets of MDF and hardboard, laying them down across the floors of theatres, then painting them and then putting all the effects on them, meticulously numbering them, then lifting them back up again and then bringing them back to our store. So when we get there at Christmas, we're able to just lay the floor down very quickly before we then install the set on the top. This one you're looking at right now says the words Swansea on it. But there are various stages around the place. There's one for Leicester, there's one for pretty much every venue, Inverness, Swindon. There's floors everywhere. So as well as scenery, people don't necessarily realise, but there are lots of flooring stores as well.
It's almost like you can buy plain jigsaws that you then paint and then take them apart and try and put them back together again. I'm looking at Swansea, I'm thinking there could be anything like 40 or 50 individual pieces to that floor, and it makes absolute sense because you will see a beautifully painted floor when you go and see a panto at Christmas. It could be the effect of a cobbled street or something like that. Obviously the venues don't want to paint the actual stage every year, so this is the easiest way to do it, and it makes absolute sense. But it may be something that you've never thought about, one of those things that we're hopefully telling you about from behind the scenes. Let's go round the corner and here's Audrey.
There she is. Yeah, Little Shop of Horrors, Audrey 2. 4 stages to the plant: the smallest plant, the middle-sized plant, then as she grows, and then finally the big man-eating plant. And what we're looking at right now is the man-eater. Yeah. And you're not really a member of the Imagine headquarters team until you've been eaten by Audrey.
Feed me.
It's a little bit of a ritual around here.
Again, more and more sets. Some costumes down here that aren't in a trundle yet, but are sort of semi-prepared. Some of them are already bagged up, ready to go in a trundle, and others that aren't. And that's every tiny inch of space is being used, isn't it?
It is. It's just so expensive to store such bulky equipment, so you just don't have the luxury of space. If you look directly above your head, Martin, you'll find 2 giant beanstalks that are being stored as well. And in fact, there's 3 up there and some Cinderella carriages. We've got everything either on the floor or in the air safely stored. And if you look again to your right, you can see hanging from the rafters of the building, those are all Dame frocks. They're all hung up in bags. Steve often jokes, there's loads of space in this unit. It's just up in the air.
I guess their walk down Dame costumes, something like that, very often have to be suspended because they're so heavy, aren't they? Some Giants props as well behind me. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they're the Giants reading matter, aren't they?
They are. Yes, so they are giant, what looks like books. But as is usual in the world of theatre and in the world of magic of pantomime, they're actually a staircase made to look like a set of books, and they're out because they're due to be refurbished next week.
Okay, shall we lead on, go upstairs, shall we, and see how wardrobe are getting on? And something we haven't talked about on any previous episode is the amount of work that is going into the wigs at this time of year as well, because they all have to be prepared, and the people who wear them have all got different size heads. So there's a fair amount of work to go on there, and that's what's happening here, isn't it?
It is absolutely. I'm not going to disturb Esther at the moment because, bless her, she's doing a fantastic job. Esther is our absolute whiz with wigs. So she is currently preparing what looks like a walk-down wig. She's nodding at me, so it's a walk-down wig, which looks like a kind of chandelier with lots of candlesticks on it, with a white wig underneath. And Esther's an absolute whiz at taking a very basic-looking wig and turning it into something utterly magical, or undoing a wig that's been used before and redressing it. So that's what Esther's doing at the moment. And bless her, she's been working through these wigs for months and months and months. There's a nod going on from Esther there.
Yeah, she doesn't want to speak to us, but she did actually have a look at some of my wigs. I did some fittings earlier on today, and she did say it's not the wigs, it's your head that's the problem, I think.
I can't possibly comment, Martin.
No, she's outraged because I've just made that up as well. Let's go back here and have a look at the costume store, because there is a little bit more space. Not much, but a little bit more than there usually is because of all the ones that we've seen downstairs.
As we're loading the trundles, so they're being taken off their usual rail and they're being loaded into the trundles. So, for example, we're standing right next to the space which is marked Inverness Peter Pan 2022, which is the area where the Inverness costumes would be stored for our production that's going to go on up there this Christmas. But as you can see, it's looking quite empty. That's because it's in its trundle already, and it's in its trundle and it's bagged. So what that means is it's been taken off the rail upstairs here, it's been taken downstairs, it's been checked, and then as each costume is ready, it gets its plastic bag put on it, it gets its label put on. And you can see behind that is Snow White Kilmarnock. That's a production going in there. Again, that area is looking pretty empty now because those costumes are prepped and they're ready to go.
Okay, let's talk about the hires briefly. We've not really spoken about that. How does that work? Because various producers will come to you for their pantos up and down the country. Do they come here and have a look at the costumes and decide what they want? And how do they get them? Do they get them at the same time as the others go out, or do they get them earlier?
We get lots of visitors coming in to hire. Some people will hire a few costumes right the way through to a full set. The costumes in our store tend to be in their sets, so we tend to try and keep productions together, mainly because they match the sets they're going out with, or they match each other. So when somebody comes to hire from us, they will get shown an entire production of sets, of costumes, rather than individual costumes. And then there may be some requests to chop and change a little bit, but yes, more often than not, they come in, they look at them all and they decide what they want. Then we create a very large list. As you can imagine, there's a lot of lists going on at the moment. Sometimes they will want those costumes resizing, sometimes they'll resize them themselves, sometimes they'll ask us to do a slight swap of bits and bobs, but yeah, basic and fundamentally, they'll come in and they'll just look through the stores with us.
There are second sets of costumes on rails above our heads. More dame and sisters costumes, I guess, above us where we're standing now. And then a complete wall. This is Esther's work, isn't it? A complete wall of wigs which appear to be ready to go.
That's right, yes, this is Esther's work. Well done, Esther. So as you can see, this wall, it is literally a wall of wigs. We have lots of wig stands attached to the wall, and each one houses a wig. There's hundreds and hundreds of them. They're not just standard wigs either. Most of them are dames' wigs, so they're embellished full-on wigs, but they're bagged, which means that they've been prepared and they're ready to go.
I mean, there must be hundreds of those there. Hundreds, literally. You have to see it to believe it.
Oh, you do, and I think people that come into our store for the first time are usually utterly blown away by what they see. We've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pairs of jazz shoes, hundreds of pairs of character shoes, hundreds of pairs of boots of different sizes and different kinds, because we're not just clothing the adults in the show, we're also clothing the children in the show. And some productions, if you take our production of Snow White even at Palace Theatre Kilmarnock, there's 33 children in that show. So we've got to find 33 individual pairs of shoes and 33 sets of underwear just for those children. And the children will probably each have 2 or 3 pairs of shoes. So the children in that production alone could take 100 pairs of shoes. And then we've got the adults on top. So the production in Kilmarnock may itself on its own get through 200 pairs of shoes. Wow. So it's those kind of logistics, and everybody's got different size feet, and they'll need black jazz shoes for day, they'll need gold jazz shoes for walk down, they'll need something else, and it's these kind of complications that people go, I hadn't really thought of it like that. I hadn't thought of the sheer volume that you have to hold. And same with underwear. Everybody gets their own set of underwear. Everybody gets at least one pair of tights. I think we might have touched upon it in a podcast previously where I said we've literally ordered tights by the thousand.
Yeah.
Not just by the hundreds, but by the thousands. So it's a big old operation to get this running.
So 33 in the junior ensemble at Kilmarnock. I can only wish the best of luck to the chaperones, if I'm honest. Now behind us, again, another wall just full of boxes, everything from mop caps to show pants. They're really important.
Oh, love a pair of show pants,
That's the
Martin.
foundation on which Panto is built. Show pants, masks, masquerade masks and so on, socks, stockings, men's tights. And it's just incredible. The system that you have here means that you know where everything is.
We do. I mean, black socks, again, is another example of they're not so popular nowadays, but we used to do a lot of UV scenes and everybody had to have a pair of black gloves, a pair of black socks and a black balaclava, as well as a pair of black leggings and a black T-shirt or a black long sleeve T-shirt. And so you imagine our 33 children in Kilmarnock, suddenly we've got to find all of that 33 times over, plus all the adults in the show. So you've got to have a way of storing, because things have got to be recycled and reused, and that's the nature of a business like this. We are the ultimate carbon. We are a carbon neutral business because we've worked really hard to get our carbon neutrality, and we're working even harder to go further with that. But ultimately, we are the ultimate recycling business as well. Everything gets used multiple times, but you've got to make sure that you know where it is to be able to find it, to reuse it.
The mistake that people have made in the past is washing all of the blacks and mixing them in with whites, and then you've got mobile star cloths during the UV scene.
The worst problem is if you wash the blacks, the black socks, the black balaclavas, the black that you're using on a UV scene, if you wash them in a washing powder, which is designed to make whites whiter, because they carry some kind of little kind of crystals in them, and they actually fluoresce under UV. And we've had it before where somebody in wardrobe has done a fantastic job of managing the wardrobe and washed everything beautifully. But all the costumes fluoresced.
Yeah.
It's an absolute
Which is
nightmare.
a completely different effect and not what you're looking for.
No, thankfully it happened at dress rehearsal, so we were able to put it right. But it was that moment of, oh no, as we realised what had gone on.
So just talk us through the final few weeks here before rehearsals start and shows start to open. How busy is it then?
Oh, it's just crazy, Martin. It's lovely. It's so wonderful, because if you look back 2 years ago, this building was dark. It had been dark for months and months and months. The electricity was off. The building had been mothballed and there was nobody around. And it was just a sad building. All these costumes were just feeling sad because they hadn't been loved. So 2 years on, whilst we're going, oh my gosh, it's quite overwhelming, it's also wonderful. I think in the building today alone, you've probably encountered the best part of 30 people moving around the building, as you've seen now, Martin, and that will just get busier and busier as the crew start to come in and load the lorries. There's an additional 10 people or so arrive on site just to load the lorries, and before you know it, this building can have 45 or 50 people working at it, just moving things around. That means we pay an awful lot of car Tetris in the car park. For those who've been, we haven't got the biggest of car parks. The majority of the year, we don't need it, but there is a period of time when we do. Our neighbours are fantastic, and they completely understand the fact that we are about to fill the road with lorries and there are going to be a lot of people around, and they support us wholeheartedly, which is lovely. But the only way I can describe it is an absolute hive of activity, and that becomes 7 days a week and pretty much 20 hours a day. The team are just incredible. Each and every person that works here is an expert in their own field, and I've said before, but we are so blessed to work with people who just love what we do as much as being good at their jobs. There are lists upon lists upon lists. Every single person in this team is a massive cog to make everything turn. We have a team meeting at 9:30 every morning, which is just a chance to say hi and how are you doing, but it's a really critical part of the day because it reminds everybody just what a key role they are playing within this business, and every single job makes a difference. Yeah, the administration team and the operations team, and in fact the whole team, you'll have never seen as many lists in your life.
And forward planning is key to all of this, isn't it, finally, because the last thing you want is to come up against any unforeseen circumstances or overlook something, because that could throw the whole operation into chaos.
Oh, completely. If we fall behind on our schedule, if we don't load a lorry on the right day, or we don't pack a trundle on the right day, or we don't send something out on the right day, because we've got such a small yard here, it knocks everything on. So yeah, things have to go out on the day that they are due to go out, or we've knocked the schedule back and it doesn't work. Or that might mean that instead of loading 4 lorries on one day and 4 the next day, the following day they've got to load 5, and that's a big ask to get 5 lorries in and out of the building in the day. We can manage loading 4, that's completely doable. 5's a bit of a push.
We mentioned the extra shows this year, so it's a bigger operation than ever. That means more staff, and that's not just people here, but that's more script writers, for instance, more choreographers, more directors and so on. The expansion of this company has been incredible, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still speechless at just what has happened. I think I've joked before, but when Steve and I sort of got together and we said, it'd be fun to put on some pantos. I don't think we ever dreamt the opportunities that would be presented to us, but also the calibre of people we would get to work with, not just at head office because they're amazing, but across the whole spectrum of the season. Just everybody that we work with, right through from the people who do the photos and the videos at our photo shoots, through to the creative teams, through to the casts and crews and the technical and the suppliers, and just everybody. We're just completely blown away by it.
I have to say, finally, with your financial head on, that the forward planning is vital in that respect as well. Budgeting this year is completely different to any other year because of the scale of the operation. Again, so you want to be as cost effective as you can be, and that's why unforeseen circumstances aren't helpful as well, isn't it?
Well, absolutely, because we're all aware of the cost of living crisis that we're living in, and it's always the joy and the things we try to balance of making sure we can manage the costs and the overheads here versus ensuring the theatres take the income they need to survive versus the cost of the ticket prices to make sure people can afford it. And it's always that very fine tightrope we're walking. Yes, we'd love to be able to put ticket prices up because that would help enormously, but then people wouldn't be able to afford them. And theatres need to get more income, so they need more secondary sales, but they can't put their prices up. And we're always in this fine balance of affordability on all parts. And yeah, that's where I spend most of my day.
And with that in mind, thank you so much for showing us around on what is a really busy day, Sarah. Have a great Panto season and a fabulous Christmas.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure, Martin. Lovely to see you again.
And we've run out of time, I'm afraid, for another episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the series to catch up with any episodes you've missed so far, and make sure you don't miss out in the future. And make sure you join me next time, because I'll be talking to the actor, writer and director Christian Patterson.
Thank you for listening to the latest edition of Just Imagine, the podcast series from Imagine Theatre. And you can find out more by going to www.imaginetheatre.co.uk.